Part 6. Zera's POV. Aaron had tried to convince me more than once in the last 3 weeks to quit my job at Stanford University as his way of protecting him, but I turned down his offer. After the appearance of the rebellion pack at the estate, Aaron had taken all the precautions necessary to ensure the safety of himself and his loved ones. But I couldn't live in fear of getting hurt. Call me stubborn, but I confronted Ron, and I made him into a cute wolf. So the devil called Theo, his she-devil partner called Nicole, and his minions didn't scare me. Except Ron was a part of Aaron, hence his name. Ron already knew you and had already established a connection with you through Aaron. Theo, however, hated Aaron and sought only to bring destruction to him and everything he cared about. You are something Aaron cares about. The voice in my head educated me. That was true, but I couldn't condition myself to a life of constant fear. I had to live my life regardless of what was happening around me. Aaron and I discussed Zion and concluded that it was better we homeschooled him until everything went back to normal. Aaron put in the resources to get a good tutor for him and, so his withdrawal from school would not affect his performance. We were certain he would get used to it. The only common ground Aaron and I found was with Zion because he kept insisting on me leaving my job. When I finally put a foot down and said no, he placed 2 security on me to guard my every move. The last ritual was 3 months away, and he said he couldn't risk me falling into the wrong hands. He was certain the rebellion pack had a plan, and he wanted to be 1 step ahead. I didn't argue with him about the guards. I learned to work with them. They kept a safe distance, even though anyone curious enough to stop and stare would figure out they followed me. They stayed outside my classes and offices depending on where I was. Though I hated it at first, it had been 3 weeks, and I was used to it at this point. I wrapped up the class and stepped out and towards my office when I noticed the familiar figure walking on. The way she walked and carried herself reminded me of none other than Nicole Kent, the Luna of the New Age pack. My heart skipped a beat at the sight of her, and instead of heading towards my office as I initially planned, I followed her, but kept a safe distance between us. A part of me could tell she knew I followed her, but she didn't care. She took a turn towards the parking lot, and there stood Daniel in a white short-sleeved shirt and khaki trousers, waiting. I didn't know who he waited for, but he didn't look impatient in his wait. Nicole walked up to him and kissed him on the lips, and I stood stunned at what took place before me. Despite being taken aback, he kissed back and wrapped his arms around her tightly. They pulled away, and he smiled fondly at her. My heart ached in fear because I knew Nicole had somehow gotten to Daniel. Aaron was right. She was a master manipulator and could toy with the hearts of anyone, man or woman. "If you want to join us, all you have to do is ask," Nicole said and turned to face the direction I was in. I wasn't completely in the open, but she had sensed my presence. She knew I followed her all the while and led me here just to give me a show. "I know you two got bad history, but Daniel Boo here would gladly forgive that and give you a treat." I stepped out from behind the car where I had hidden and came to stand before them, and I felt the lingering gaze of Daniel on me. I felt guilty standing in Daniel's presence. I felt like I failed him as a good friend and colleague. "Nicole," I called, my voice low and unfriendly. "Zera," she said heartily, as if we were friends, as if playing a game with someone's life was fun. She stepped up towards me, but I didn't back away. I had every reason to fear, but if she was using Daniel to get to me, I knew she couldn't act out before him. That made me feel a little safe. "I know what you're doing, and I will not let you destroy his life like you tried to do Aaron's." I snarled at her, my hands balling into a tight fists. She laughed. "Poor little you. You buy everything he tells you, don't you? I didn't ruin his life. I left on my own, and you don't get to have a say in this because you're not Daniel's family or lover. He's mine. He isn't yours and will never be." My voice rose to a higher pitcher along with my anger. "I thought you were happy with your lover, Aaron. Why are you so obsessed with Daniel now?" "Because I know what you're capable of, and I will not let you do that." She smiled and reached out to stroke my face with the back of her hand, but I threw my face away from her in disgust. Her teeth gritted, and she withdrew her hand before storming off. Daniel stepped up to follow her like a cute little puppy, but I ran up to him and stepped in his way, not letting him through. He glanced at me, and his eyes narrowed in displeasure. "What are you doing?" "Daniel, listen to me. That lady is dangerous, and you do not want to be anywhere near her." He chuckled, but he didn't look happy with me. "You really have some nerves, don't you? Once upon a time, I was here in love with you and ready to do anything for you, but that wasn't enough for you. You cheated on me and went off to be with the man you loved. I was devastated, but I couldn't let that bring me down. We could still be friends, I told myself, and I tried to reach out and mend the bridge despite being the one whose heart got broken and thrown into the sea. You barely treated me with any form of kindness, nor did you give me a moment of your time, and when I needed you, you were barely there. It hurt, and I took the pain until I no longer could, and that was when Nicole came into my life and turned things around. She gave my life meaning and purpose, and since she became a part of me, my days have gotten brighter." "She's only with you to get to me," I exclaimed, frustrated and not knowing how else to put the words. He pressed his lips together and pain flashed in his eyes. "Why would you say that to me? What do you hope to gain? I know I am not good enough for you, but I am worth it to someone else." "Listen to me, Daniel." I took his hand in mine. "Things aren't the way they seem, and you have to trust me on this one. I know I haven't been the best of friends or anything, but I need you to believe me." He yanked his hand away from mine, and I gasped. "You know, for once in my life someone wants to be with me, and you are telling me they are only with me because of you. Of course it has to be about you. Everything has to revolve around you. I never thought you would be like one of those selfish people who only cares about themselves, but that is exactly who you are, and thank you for showing your true colors. Do not come near me or talk to me ever. Pretend as if you never knew me, and I'll do the same." With that said, he brushed past me and walked away, and I could do nothing but watch him go. "Mommy, you're not eating," Zion called out to me, and I snapped out of my thought to find the eyes of Ivan, Zion, and Aaron on me at the dining table where we sat having dinner. I knew Aaron was the most curious of the three. When I got home hours ago, he asked why I had hurried off without telling the bodyguards where I went. I knew the guards he had placed on me had fed him information about my misbehavior and disappearance. I wasn't ready to talk about it, and I told him I just needed air. He knew that was a lie, but he didn't place any form of pressure on me because he knew better. I brushed it off casually. "Oh, do not mind Mommy. She's got work stuck in her head. Go on, eat your food, and you will be just as tall as Daddy and Uncle Ivan." "They are really tall," he admitted, and I knew their heights must have left him in deep thoughts once or twice. "And you want to be that tall, right?" I asked. He nodded vigorously, and without having to be told, he dug into his food and ate as fast as he could. Ivan's gaze didn't stay long on me because he returned to his meal almost immediately, but Aaron's did, and I knew he would want to know what got to me and killed my interest in the food. After dinner, I helped Zion with the homework his tutor had given him today before seeing him to bed. I kissed his forehead and bade him good night. I closed the door to his room and made my way towards mine. Stepping inside, I found Aaron on the bed, already tucked in. He had a book in his hand and his attention was fixated on it, but as soon as he noticed my presence, he glanced up and shut the book. "Zion already tucked in?" I nodded, and he adjusted the bedsheets so I could get in. When I did, he pulled me closer. "How was your day at work?" I sighed, relaxing against the feel of his warm body on mine. "It was fine." We wandered into silence again, and I knew he wanted to ask the important question, but kept holding himself back. "Do you want to talk about it?" His curiosity lingered, but I felt no sort of pressure in his voice. I pried up at him, and our gazes locked, and I knew there was no escaping his question. I recalled the event of the day, and I felt guilty about how things happened with Daniel and me. I was really the one to blame, the one who cheated, played with, and broke his heart because I couldn't face my reality with courage. I dragged him along with me, only to drop him off when I was done. I sucked in a breath. "I saw Nicole today." Aaron tensed up behind me but still maintained silence, so I continued. "She's with Daniel, and I think she's doing that to get to me." Daniel is already too wrapped up in her web to see the truth. I fear he's going to get hurt, and there's no way to save him or help because I already hurt him badly in the past. I feel like a horrible person. Do I even get to call Nicole out when I'm no better? I whimpered. Sometimes leaving someone in the dark does more harm than good. Aaron didn't say much, not as if I expected him to. He just pulled me closer, and my head lay on his chest. I'm sorry about what happened, and as much as your need to help lingers, there's nothing you can do. It hurts even more. She's only in his life because I left him vulnerable, and that's on me. You can't blame yourself. You didn't know. I will see if there's something I can do for him. But this is Nicole Kent, and I know what she's capable of. Until the ritual is completed, I'd rather we steer clear from her path. My lashes fluttered, and I thought back to how hurt Daniel looked today. I was a horrible person. I might not save him, but I would not give up on him. I was going to fight for him like I knew he'd fight for me. Aaron spoke about things getting better, but I heard a little because my lashes fluttered and my mind drifted off to the state of sleep. My phone in the dressing mirror went off, and I picked up and see Lionel as the caller ID. I smiled and placed the phone to my ear, and her voice came through immediately. Good morning, Zera. Lionel, good morning. How's my least favorite sister doing? He teased. I rolled my eyes. She's doing great, and how's my least favorite brother doing? I asked him, and I could feel her eyes roll. You don't get to use that line, you only have one brother, he pointed out smugly. Says you. Says a faithful father and loud wife, he said, referring to our father and mother. Are you still game for the day's picnic? He asked, moving to the more serious discussion. I think Tatiana has a boyfriend. I've seen the two together a few times. I think they must have met at her new place of work. My eyes widened, my excitement kicking in. It was high time she moved on from Owens and found some happiness. Oh wow, so much to discover. Count me in. I told him, and then realized I would have to come with my guards. It still didn't matter, they would keep a safe distance that would give us a sense of privacy. Fine. What about you? I asked, and silence took over the seconds that followed. Has any girl taken your fancy lately? One has, but she scares the life out of me, he answered, and I think I knew who he spoke about. You mean Ceci, don't you? I noticed the way he looked at her whenever she was close, and the few times I'd seen them together, I saw how hard it was for him to keep himself together. Yes, and I will say nothing else, he said. Same time and place tomorrow, he ended the call. You can't help who you're attracted to, and though Lionel's story looked like Daniel and Nicole, it was different. Lionel knew who Ceci was and what she was capable of, so he wasn't being led blindly. Daniel, however, had no idea who Nicole was, and if he did, he would realize how evil she was. What if he does and still loves her? The voice in my head asked. I placed my phone down on the dressing mirror. Then I'd let them be, but I doubt he knew who he was falling for. What the hell? I spoke, glaring up at one of the bodyguards named Francis, who suddenly just got in my way when I tried getting into the car and heading out to meet Lionel and Tatiana for our picnic. We had planned on meeting up at our usual spot by 4, so I stayed back after my work closed to get a few markings and grading done for the tests I had on my desk. This way, I would not have to take them home. Once it was 3:30 p.m., I stepped out of the office and locked the door, hoping to head out only to have Francis step out of line when I got to my car. He was doing more than his job at this point. I didn't understand his goal, and I didn't want to. I had a place to get to, and I didn't want him making me go late. I'm sorry. We just received instructions from the Alpha to bring you home. What the hell? If the Alpha wants me home, he would have called. Now get out of my way before you get yourself in trouble. I snarled at him, but he didn't move away like he should. Instead, he nodded at the second guard, Bruce. They both took hold of my hand and pulled me away towards another car, ignoring my struggles and protest. I am sorry, Ms. Adams. We are just doing what we were told, he said and gently pushed me into the car. I entered and wrapped my hand around my left wrist, which felt sore from having struggled with them to be set free. They shut the door and entered. I rested my anger. They weren't to blame. They were just following orders. Aaron, however, deserved to be blamed. He knew I had plans for today, and he decided at the last minute to step in and change the course of things just because he could. Lionel and Tatiana were probably at the park waiting for me now, and here I was, being driven home. The car stopped at the park estate after 30 minutes' drive, and I stepped out and stormed into the house. I ran into Ivan on the way in, and he spoke to me, but I was too angry to hear or even give him my attention as I headed for the study where I'd found Aaron these last few days. Once I got to the door, I pushed it open and stepped in. As expected, I found him, seated across the room, reading. He glanced up at me at the intrusion, and a smile spread across his face, but it vanished the same second after seeing the look on my face. "Zera," he started, rising to his feet, but I didn't let him finish his words. "What is this?" I bellowed, my face turning red and my hands balling into a fist. He looked around me as if trying to find what I spoke about, and after failing, they returned to me, and he asked, "What?" "Do not fucking act clueless with me," I snapped, pointing my finger at him. "Why did you tell your guards to drag me home when you know damn well I had plans with my family?" He sighed and walked towards me slowly. "I am sorry. You're right, I knew your plans to meet up with your siblings today, and I did not mean to be the villain. But I had to be. We believe the rebellion pack will strike today and we don't know how or why, and I can't take any chances." "Why didn't you call me then?" "Because I didn't know who could be watching or listening. The crimson moon approach with every day that passes, and every pack by now must have known what it means. The only thing on my mind was getting you home safe and unharmed." I sighed, and my lashes fluttered. He had never lied to me, and I knew he wouldn't start now. "The crimson moon is still many months away," I told him. His hand came up to cup my face. "I know that, but you're important to me, and I know the rebellion pack know that too. They would want to do anything within their power to take you away. Believe me when I say I am doing this for your good. I can't risk you, and I wouldn't try." My anger subsided at his explanation, and I knew I couldn't stay mad at him for long. Damn this man. His eyes narrowed at me. "You're not mad at me, are you?" He was looking out for me, and I couldn't stay mad at him for that. I shook my head. "I'm not. I just need to call them. Lionel and Tatiana. I need to inform them I won't be present." I reached into my bag and pulled out my phone. "Ceci went ahead to Lionel. She would keep him safe until we are sure of our next step," he answered, and I knew he told the truth. "And Tatiana?" "She as well. I sent the beta Jude to monitor her," he answered, telling me he had all the things covered. "Thank you," I said. Knowing that my siblings were safe was a relief. He took hold of my cold hands. "I should be the one thanking you. You've sacrificed everything for me, and I don't know if I'm worth it." "You're worth it and more." I tilted my head and kissed his lips before wrapping my arms around him. I admit I was a train wreck, and I also knew how rebellious I could get, especially when backed into a corner, and I was grateful for the man Aaron was. He always had his plans and always saw ahead. I didn't say it as often as I should, but I was glad to be his, glad that he was mine, and glad that we were together. It felt too real to be a dream. I felt the wind blowing over my face as my heart hammered against my chest at the impending terror approaching. "Run to the fountain now," Aaron told me, and without waiting, I took to my heels, running as fast as my feet could take me. Cold gripped my skin, but the adrenaline rushing through my veins made me focus less on that. I didn't want to leave, Aaron all alone with those men, but there was nothing I could do there, and my stay would only leave me vulnerable to the attackers. The fountain, from what I had gathered so far, was a defense built by the Dominio pack as a fortress for the humans in their midst in times of war between any pack. The human who would likely be the weakest amongst them would run and hide under the fountain until the war or whatever conflict was going on ended. Just like every other fountain, water flowed through it, but unlike the others, its water was already laced with wolfsbane. This was a repellent for every werewolf, as wolfsbane was their green kryptonite. The fountain also had silver bullets and daggers close to its mouth, and I had learnt how to use them. Some werewolves were stronger than others and could endure the fountain and the pain it inflicted. They would not relent until they found their target and eliminated them. If such cases arose, I could use the silver bullet gun to defend myself. That was what I wanted to do now. I was a few meters away from the fountain when something lifted me off the ground and threw me down, so I fell on my face on the cold, hard ground. I groaned out in pain, but the pain disappeared almost immediately after. I rose to my feet and ran and hid under the first layer of the fountain, shivering at the touch of cold water in the early hours of the night, but covering my mouth so I wouldn't make a sound even though my pursuer saw me take cover under the fountain. "What do you think you're doing?" the man with a scary face asked, taking a step toward the fountain, and my heartbeat increased. I replied to his question with silence, and my hand found the gun placed in the fountain for desperate measures. This man scared me, and I knew if he could have his way, he would harm me. "That's your best place to hide?" he roared, storming towards me and reaching into the fountain to grab me. But I pulled away from his reach, and as the water poured on his hands, I watched it burn. He growled out in pain and withdrew his hand. He turned to me and growled loudly, his eyes glowing blue, and it was my first time seeing a blue-eyes wolf. The blue eyes meant he had taken a human life before, and from his attempt tonight, he was ready to take another. His panic-filled growling reduced, and I knew his hand had healed up, which only meant he was going to try again. My hand blindly found the silver bullet gun in the fountain, and I clocked it and waited for him to make a move. Just as expected, he drew a deeper breath and reached into the fountain with his now healed hand, and this time, I let him catch me. Growling, he pulled me out of the water, and as I emerged, I raised my hand and pointed the gun straight at his forehead. Before he could realize what was happening, I already pulled the trigger, and the bullet sank into his head. His grip on my shoulder reduced, and he fell backwards onto the ground, dead. I heard footsteps racing towards me, and I readied myself for the worst. I stepped back into the fountain and cocked the gun, ready to fire at any and everyone who comes at me. "Zera!" Ceci called out, running over to me, but not coming close to the fountain where I stood. "Are you okay?" she asked, her eyes big and weary. I nodded a little. "Yes, I'm fine," I assured her. Her attention moved from me to the one on the ground whom I just shot and killed before returning to me. "You did well." "Yes, I think Aaron needs help," I told her. I dropped the gun into the fountain, where I picked it up before stepping out. I should feel cold from being so wet in the early hours of a frosty morning, but I didn't. The event that had happened had adrenaline rushing through my veins at an insane level. She nodded. "They are already with him," she told me. "You're safe now." My eyes snapped open in bed at the buzzing of my phone, and I realized I had been dreaming all along. My heart hammered against my chest, and my heart clenched with fear at how real the dream felt, and it took about a minute to regain composure. I glanced at the clock on the nightstand and found it was a few minutes past 7 o'clock. That meant that I had only had 4 hours of sleep, as I had stayed up thinking into the early hours of the morning. I quit my job at Stanford University last week with Aaron's support, and though every day I ask myself if it was a wise decision, I consoled and told myself that it was. Last night I had those deep thoughts and doubt moments, and it kept me up into the early morning. I only found sleep after Aaron came home at around 2 a.m. and held me close to his body. He had told me a war was coming, and I felt it draw near with every passing day. I didn't want to talk to anyone. I wanted to stay snuggled against Aaron's body and find a little more sleep, so I reached on the nightstand and flipped the phone upside down to continue my sleep, but the call came in the second time. I knew whoever was calling wouldn't stop, not until I picked up. Groaning, I sat up and picked up my phone while rubbing my eyes clumsily. The caller ID boldly read Lionel, and I wondered what could make him want to blow up my phone at this early hour of the morning. "Hello?" I spoke after picking up the call. My voice appeared half sleepy and half annoyed. "Zera," came the trembling voice of Lionel over the phone, and all the hairs on my body stood alert, knowing something terrible had happened. "Lionel, what happened?" I asked, even though deep down I didn't want to know what it was. I felt Aaron also sit up in bed, probably because my voice had woken him up. "Tatiana is dead, Zera," he cried, and my heart stopped beating. "What?" I exclaimed, tears already streaming down my face. "She didn't show up to work today or yesterday, and her boss called me to check up on her." He took a pause and dragged in a shaky breath. I went over to her place to check up on her and found her dead this morning. He finished, sobbing terribly. I was unconsciously tugging at my hair as he spoke, and it was hard enough to pull them off from the roots. The ambulance just arrived to take her, Zera, and so I thought to call you. I will send you the address of the hospital they are taking her body to today. I was already pacing around the room, and this woke Aaron up. He rubbed at his sleepy eyes and pulled himself up to sit down, his eyes following my every move. "Zera, my love," he called out as I lowered the phone from my ear. "Tatiana is dead, Aaron," was all I could say. He stood before me the next second and pulled me to himself, and I sobbed into his chest. What were the odds that Tia dies amid this chaotic time? This was an attack on me and my family. Aaron once said they couldn't get to him and would attack the weakest link. They couldn't get to me, and they took the most vulnerable one, Tia. Tia didn't deserve this, and I should have done more to protect her. I should have done something. This was my fault. It was all my fault. I felt angry, and I wanted to scream and shout, but I couldn't do any of that. I could only cry, and I didn't like that. I pulled away from the hug and rushed to the wardrobe and picked out a pair of black trousers and a polo shirt. I noticed their lingering gaze of Aaron on me, but I didn't pay any mind to him. He walked over to his side of the wardrobe and pulled out a pair of gray joggers and a white shirt. All this he did in silence. I wore my jeans and shirt and grabbed the car keys from the nightstand and headed out without thinking about him. "Wait for me. You're not going." Aaron spoke as he pulled the polo over his head, his voice commanding. I cut him off. "She's my family, not yours. You do not get to tell me I can't go there. Unless you tie me to the bed, I'm going." My voice came out snappy. This wasn't his fault, but I didn't like the words or the command attached to it. A part of me felt they took Tatiana because they couldn't get to me. She got caught up in the heat of what was going on with us. I knew there was a price to pay for being with him, but I didn't know it would be this grave. I didn't know it would be this unbearable price. It came with unbearable pain. This was all speculation, and I was jumping to conclusions, but I couldn't help it. I was looking for who to blame, and all fingers pointed at me. "I was going to say you're not going alone," he completed his words. "I'm coming with you, Zera," he said, and that was an order I couldn't rebel against. He took the keys from my hand and led us out of the house. I told him the address of the hospital. Lionel sent to me, and he drove us down there. Not waiting for Aaron, I ran out of the car and into the building, dialing Lionel's number so he could tell me where he was. He picked up the call. "Where are you?" "The 4th floor." I ended the call and ran into the elevator, pressing the 4th floor button before realizing I came here with Aaron. I would call him as soon as I got up and tell him where I was. The floors counted down, and as the door opened on the 4th floor to let me out, I found Aaron already standing and waiting for me. I didn't ask how. I knew he had super hearing and could have easily listened to my conversation with Lionel. Being his mate meant he could read my thoughts as well, and with his super speed, everything was possible. But most times, like now, I forget all of that. He didn't look thrilled, and I knew he wanted to tell me my safety was important, and he was right, but it was hard to remember that when the situation at hand had to do with the death of a loved one. "I'm sorry," I told him, and we both made our way to the waiting room, where we found Lionel pacing around in the waiting room with his arms crossed over his chest. He looked disoriented and shaken, and it must have been from having found her lifeless body first. It brought back images of almost 2 years ago when I found Lionel face down in his apartment when he had overdosed. It was a horrific sight, and it shook me for days, even after the doctors assured me he was stable. That memory was one that still shook me whenever I went back to it. So I did my best not to go back. I didn't know how he was coping with what he saw, and I knew he'd need help and therapy. Lionel paused as if sensing our presence, and he turned to the door, his eyes weak and wounded. My heart went out to him, and I rushed over, wrapping my arms around him. "I'm sorry," I said while stroking his hair, and he shook his head as if to tell me it wasn't my fault. "Tia is gone," he repeated, and my eyes welled up, and I blinked the tears back. "What has the pathologist said so far?" He pulled away. Nothing, yet. They are running an autopsy on her to determine the cause of death. He turned to Erin, who stood at the entrance watching us, and nodded at him. The last time we spoke, she told me about the guy at work that asked her out. The date was this Friday, and I remember how excited she was about it. I can't believe she is gone. A tear ran down my face, and I quickly brushed it off. I opened my mouth to speak, but shut it when I heard. "Where is she?" Betty's voice demanded, and I knew she was asking for Tia as well. Lionel, knowing who it was, excused himself and stepped out to go meet Betty. I didn't want to go close, but I couldn't help it. There was something Betty and I had in common. We loved Tatiana, and so I knew I shared in her grief. I moved to the door, watching Lionel wrap his comforting arms around her as she sobbed aloud. Tears ran down my face, and I brushed them off. It can't be. My baby can't be gone. Her denial showed itself in her voice when Lionel consoles her. The last time I saw her, she was excited about starting up her part-time class in business studies since she had dropped out to get married over 6 years ago and wanted to get back into her life. She told me how she thought I was brave for pulling my life together and doing better for myself, even after everything. We had plans to meet 2 days ago, but we never did. Erin had reasons to believe I was in danger and brought me home instead. Since then, we had only communicated over the phone. If she was here with me instead of in my old place, she would still be alive. If I had told her the truth and pulled her closer, she would still be alive. I told her the city wasn't for her. I told her to stay with me in the countryside. She needed a quiet life, but she wanted to belong, and she wanted to be like her sister and be brave. Look where that brought her. Tears streamed down Betty's face, and she turned to me. "This is all your fault. You took Tia from me the same way you took your father from me, and I will never forgive you." "Mom, stop." Lionel spoke up in my defense. "This isn't her fault." Betty had her mind made up and would not stop, though. I had always been the villain in her story, and that will never change. "But it is her fault. Everything is her fault," she insisted. "She's filled my life with so much misery and pain, and she deserves nothing but the worst in life." I couldn't stand and listen to it anymore, and I took my leave. I wanted to stay and know what the next preparations for Tia were, and I wanted to know what my contribution would be in achieving it. But I couldn't stand and have Betty tell me how her life was miserable because of me, and so I took my leave. "Zera," Erin called to me, but I didn't want to stop, not until I was out of the building. He caught me by my hand and pulled me closer to himself, and I struggled to set myself free from him. I needed to be away from him and from everyone as well, but he didn't let go. He knew the last thing I wanted was for him to let go, and so he didn't. There I broke down, sobbing in pain and weeping for losing my sister. I didn't even get to see her before leaving, and it hurt so much. "Let it out. I'm here," he assured, stroking my back tenderly. We stayed that way, and I cried until my head began to hurt. Erin took me into his arms and brought me out of the hospital building. He placed me in the car and drove us home. When he stopped the car, he carried me into our room and then moved to draw me a quick bath. He ordered the cook to make us brunch, as we hadn't eaten yet. I didn't have an appetite for food. I needed a bath and then coil up in a ball on the bed, but I said nothing as he gave the cook's instructions to follow. I sighed and settled in as I felt an instant relief did the ache, but not for the pain of loss. "Thank you," I moaned, my eyes lingering on him. "You're welcome." I took hold of his hand. "Join me." I beckoned to him. He hesitated. "You're sure?" "I don't want to be alone," I told him. This was the most vulnerable thing I've said since the day began, and it was honest. I never asked where he went yesterday that made him come home at 2 a.m., but I know it wasn't a good place. My breath hitched as I thought of how beautiful this man was with all his scars and imperfections. He was so much perfect compared to me, though. I scooted to the side to let him into the bathtub, and he got in behind me before pulling me closer so my back rested against him. At the touch of our bodies, I felt a sense of completeness and contentment, and I wanted to stay here for as long as I could. I knew he was what I needed to get over this grief and brokenness. I wanted to feel vulnerable with him more than anything, and I knew he would not run away if he saw that side of me. I maneuver around in the tub, so I laid sideways into him. I clung to him as if he'd escape if I didn't. She's gone, and it's all my fault. I began with a weak voice and tears rolled down my face. His right hand wrapped around my middle. It's not your fault. Do not let Betty get to you, he tells me, patting my back with his left hand. If I had exposed her to the supernatural world and told her what existed in our world, she would have had a better way of protecting herself. But I kept her in the dark, believing I did the right thing. It wasn't the right thing. The truth about our world would have been so much better than death. You didn't know this would happen. You did your best to protect her, as any good sister would. You can't blame yourself for what you didn't know. I wanted to blame myself and wanted to carry all the blames. If I could bring Tia back, I'd do things differently. I should have protected her, but I didn't. I failed her. He must have read my thought because he said, "It's okay to grieve. What's not okay to do is blame yourself for something you couldn't have changed either way. I don't think Tatiana would want that for you." I nudged my head so I could stare at him, and leaning in, I kissed his lips. Despite being taken aback, he responded by wrapping his hand around the back of my head and kissing back. We did nothing else for the next few minutes that passed, just soft kisses and caresses that slowly awakened the desire to belong. I wanted to forget what had happened. I wanted to escape, even if it was for a little while. He stood beside the bed, staring at me and not willing to join in yet. "Thank you," I mumbled. I honestly didn't know what I'd do without him at this point. "You're welcome." "Come to bed then?" I beckoned and he nodded. He moved into the bed, pulling me closer, so I laid my head against his chest, listening to his steady heartbeat as I did in the bathroom. I had never told anyone I'd been with this, but I wanted to share my story with Aaron. I haven't been closer to anyone, as I was with him. He was my mate, the one meant for me, and so I felt safe enough to share it. My father was my favorite person growing up. We did things together, and whenever he'd take Lionel out for any game, he would take me out as well. I loved him, and he was a great person. One day when I was 11, he came home with 2 tickets to see the state swimming team, and I came along to watch. That was where I developed a love for swimming, and he was more than proud when I told him about it. He enrolled me in the swimming school, and I began taking classes. I paused and peeked up at Aaron and found him listening attentively. It made me continue. Betty wasn't a lover of the whole swimming idea and told me I could look for something better to invest myself in. Father, however, was okay with my choice, and that was all I needed. I continued training, and 3 years into it, I won my first inter-school competition. He was there to see it, but Mother wasn't. When I turned 15, we had the regional competition, and the school team took the 2nd position, which made us qualify for the state competition. Our school flew us over to the next state to prepare, but my father couldn't come with us immediately because he had work to finish. He promised he'd come over as fast as he could. Then he kissed my head and told me to stay safe. That was the last time I saw him. He never made it to the competition, and all the while I performed, I thought he had forgotten or abandoned me. But little did I know, he was involved in a terrible accident that left him dead on the spot. Tears ran down my face, and I brushed them off and blinked back the rest. My school won the competition, and we were awarded scholarships to go further into the most prestigious university in the state, and that was great news to me. My joy died soon when I found out what had happened to my father. I blamed myself because there was no one else to blame. If I had heeded Betty's advice and given up swimming just like she told me to when we first started, her husband and our father would still be alive. The same goes for Tia. Perhaps, if she had kept to her path as never crossed way, she would still. More tears ran down my face. "Shh, don't say that. Do not be hard on yourself," he hushed up. "Bad things happen to people that come around me." That's not true, and this is Betty's words in your head, doing the condemnation. I can list many people around you who love you and are safe. Bad things will always happen, but it is no one's fault, definitely not yours. I know your dad wouldn't want you taking the blame for what happened, and he did everything he did because he loved you. Aaron, being the great man he was, still defended me, and looked for reasons why what happened wasn't my fault. We never knew what happened or what caused the accident. The car was said to have been run into by another car because of the impact, yet the other car or its driver they never found, even after a year of investigation. The case was closed and they tagged it unsolved. To this day, the killer is still out there, and with Tatiana, I doubt we'll ever find the one responsible. We will. Keep the faith. He leaned in and placed his lips on my forehead. He pulled me against his body, and after an hour of my mind running with different thoughts, my eyes finally shut. To say things had gotten better in the last week would be a lie. I had fallen out with Aaron a few times in the last week. While he wanted me to wait and do nothing, my mind and patience didn't let me. Call me crazy, but I would not stay back and try to figure out how to deal with the threat at hand. Nicole and Theo were the threat. The threat killed Tia, and every day that went by was a reminder of what I had failed to do. I failed to protect her, but I could make sure those behind what happened to her got what they deserved. Yesterday, I walked into the study while Aaron and his siblings planned their next course of action, and I told them I wanted to be included. They all stared at me with eyes of pity and understanding. I wasn't looking to be understood. I wanted to be a part of the plan, and they didn't want that. Aaron took me aside and told me to trust him, but I told him I didn't. I couldn't. I had felt his withdrawal since the night I told him about my father's death. It felt almost as if he blamed me too and believed I ruined everything I touch. Though he said nothing, deep in my guts, I knew he was hiding something from me. It hurt, and so I did my best to not overthink it. We said little after that, and though they let me in on their discussion, I knew how unwanted my presence was. I couldn't fault them completely. I was human, after all. I wanted to leave to be with my kind, my family and friends, the ones I had left. But I couldn't. I had to stay here, even though I didn't want to be. My safety depended on staying here with Aaron. Today I barely left my room. Although Aaron slept beside me, didn't hold on to me as he used to, and when it was morning he left without informing me. I guess I deserved that for being such a pain. It had been rough for both of us, and I didn't want to add to it. I wanted us to find balance. "You've been gone all day," I said as the door cracked open and Aaron stepped into the room. I didn't have to look up to see him. Some part of me could tell he was the one in the room with me. It could be the mate bond because I've read about it, or it could be something else. Either way, it was a good sense. I reached out to Lionel today, and he informed me of Betty's plan for Tia. He told me she planned on burying her as fast as possible because she didn't see the point of keeping her body around for much longer. The first result was misplaced, and so they had to run another, which dragged on to today. Betty was tired of the entire process at this point. Lionel told me the funeral would hold immediately after the autopsy results came out. That was a few days away, and I told him to keep me posted. He asked me how I was holding up, and I didn't lie. I told him I wasn't doing so well with that, but assured him I was fine. Aaron didn't leave my side, even though our relationship had gotten worse in the past week. I knew he would not leave me in these hard times. I asked how he was coping, and he said he went back to his art, which was so much better than drugs. He also told me Ceci had been beside him, and that assured me he was in good hands. The rest of the day I spent with Zion, reading to him and helping him with the little homework he had. It kept my mind preoccupied and gave little room for negative thoughts. I tucked Zion to bed a few hours ago, and now I was in my room reading and about to tuck myself in. I received silence from him in return, and it arose my suspicion, making me turn around to look at him. He stood at the door, with his back resting against the wall and arms crossed over his chest. He observed me, and standing so far away, I couldn't tell the look on his face, but his silence didn't sit well with me. "Hey!" I waved dramatically at him. "What's up with you?" He smiled and stepped further into the room. "Nothing. You've been gone all day. That doesn't feel like nothing." I told him my voice was small. "I know we haven't been on the best of terms, and I am sorry if I made things harder than they need to be." "Don't be sorry," he said, strolling over to me and stopping when he stood at the foot of the bed. He climbed in, and I couldn't stop my gaze from following his movement. He had a mischievous look on his face, and I wondered what he wanted to do. "You didn't tell me you'd be gone all day." I pout. I promised myself I wouldn't be an annoying or clingy girlfriend a long time ago, but that was exactly what I had become this past week, the former more than the latter. I could not help it. I've loved no one the way I loved him, and things haven't gone great so far. "You're fucking sexy when you pout like that," he said, his attention flickering between my lips and eyes. "I pout this way when I am sad," I told him, pouting even more. He smiles. "I guess I'll have to keep making you sad." He caught my already extended bottom lip between his and consumed it. The kiss was great, amazing even, but I didn't feel the much emotion I used to feel, and it made me believe something was up. "What's wrong?" I asked, stroking his face. He placed his head on mine. "I'm just thinking about everything. All the choices that you have made because of me. Everything you have lost." I pulled back to stare at him. "Aaron, nothing that has happened is your fault. Alpha, Theo, and Nicole deserve all the blame, and they will get what's coming for them. You shouldn't blame yourself. All you have done since you came into my life was fix what has been broken for so long." The look on his face didn't look like one ready to believe my words, and I didn't like that. "You do not believe me." "I'm trying," he muttered, his eyes unable to stare into mine. "Then try harder. I know I haven't made it any easier for you so far, but believe me, it's the truth." I ran soft caresses over his face, and he shivered. "Look at me," he did as I asked, and his gaze locked on mine. "You saved my life, Aaron Hart, and you've brought me nothing but happiness. And though I have moments of doubt, I don't regret having you with me this far. Never doubt that, okay?" He nodded. I leaned in and kissed his lips, pulling him closer and showing him just how wanted he was. A week later, Lionel had given me information about the venue of the funeral service, and though he sent me the address, I couldn't locate it on the map, and so he came and take me. The service would start by 9 a.m., and he instructed me to be ready before 7:30 a.m., so we could go on time. I woke earlier than I had most days and got ready in my black square-necked gown, hat, and veil. These were my moaning attires. Aaron also woke up after a while of sleeping soundly and asked if he could come with. I told him no. I was going because Tia was my sister, and I knew Betty would not be happy to see me, much less seeing him. Falling out with her because she was rude to Aaron or Zion was the last thing I wanted to do at Tia's funeral, so I insisted he stayed home to take care of Zion. He didn't argue, but insisted that Daymore came along with me for protection. The city wasn't safe, and I knew his enemies were still out there against him. I nodded and told him I was grateful for his care. Lionel arrived at 7:30 just like he had informed me, and I bid Aaron and Zion goodbye before following him out. Daymore was already waiting in the car, and I got inside with him while Lionel and Ceci drove off. I wasn't ready to do what needed to be done today. I wasn't ready to say goodbye to Tia. We didn't plan on goodbyes, not this quick. She was my little sister, and I loved her, and I didn't know if saying goodbye would come easy. My eyes welled up, and I dug my hand into my small purse and pulled out my white handkerchief to mop the tears away before they spilt. Daymore glanced at me but remained silent, and I felt grateful he said nothing. His silence was enough. We arrived at exactly 8:50 a.m., and Daymore stayed outside while I continued into the chapel. The priest and a few friends of hers and Betty were around. It was a small gathering just like Betty wanted, and for once, I appreciate her wisdom in this. When it was time, the priest officiating the funeral stepped forward and began the rites, calling into remembering the life she lived and who she was. I glanced at Lionel, who sat closer to Betty, and I found him wiping his face with a handkerchief. Her departure was a painful one, and I wasn't surprised that Lionel was heartbroken. I wondered who would be next. The autopsy result came in, and the pathologists who ran the rest cited no foul play and therefore had ruled her death on natural causes, but I knew better. I was afraid now more than ever for my family and friends. I couldn't keep them safe forever, and I knew it was only a matter of time. I didn't want to lose anyone anymore. I wouldn't survive the pain. The service ended, and a few friends and family gave the farewell speech. Lionel turned over to me, inquiring with his eyes if I had something to say, but I shook my head. I barely gave my answer when I saw Owens take the stand to speak. My teeth gritted, and I couldn't believe his audacity this painful time. He had hurt her and broken her heart while she yet lived, and now he was here to give a speech. I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe Betty allowed it. Then again, the old woman never saw Owens as the villain, not as much as she saw me. The service ended, and undertakers came and took the casket away. I moved to Lionel, who was the only family and friendly face I had here. Ceci stood beside him, and I knew that her presence was for his protection, as it was for his comfort. "Hey," he placed his hand on my shoulder, and I flashed him a small smile. "Hey, we will get through this," he assured me with a firm voice. I nodded. "Yes, I believe it." A few unknown faces approached us and offered their condolences, and as they departed, I saw Betty approach, and behind her was Owens, her newfound son. My teeth gritted at the sight of him, and I wasn't happy that he was here, not after what he had done to this family. "Why did you come?" Betty demanded, and I did not know how she had the energy to start a fight in this time of grief. Believe it or not, Tia was my sister, and we had gotten over our misunderstanding, and that's why I'm here to pay my last respect. I can't say the same for Owens over here. You knew what he did to the daughter you claimed to love while she was alive, and how he broke her spirit, but here he is with you, as if he did nothing. I accused. "This isn't about Owens. It is about you. You killed Tia," she accused, her tone rising. "You brought her into the city, you exposed her to a life she wasn't ready for, and you left her to die." The eyes of the others still around turned to me, and I felt cold. I couldn't respond. She believed Tia's death was my fault, just like my father's. "Mom, stop it," Lionel intervened, stepping up between us, an act to shield me from her verbal assault. "Why should I? Everyone needs to know the truth. If she had not bewitched my baby, she wouldn't have left for the city, and she wouldn't be dead now." She repeated the same thing she told me at the hospital. I didn't reply. I agree with her. If I had stayed out of their lives, perhaps this would have been different. My eyes grew glassy, but I couldn't stand there and cry, so I walked away from them, not stopping even when Lionel called out to me. I stepped into the bathroom stall and locked the door. I pressed my head against the door, and tears came pouring out. Betty always knew the things to say to break me, and even after 10 years, she still found her way to do that. I hated crying, but it was the only outlet I had. It's never easy to lose the ones we love. A slightly familiar voice said from the side of the bathroom stall. My eyes flew open and my head darted to the side. The voice came from, there stood Nicole with her arms crossed over her head and her flaring eyes fixed on me. My heart doubled in its beat and fear seized my entire being. I knew she heard the change in my heartbeat and noticed the change in my being at the sight of her. I wanted to leave because I saw danger at the sight of her, and I wanted to run as fast as I could, but I had locked myself in and knew Nicole would easily reach and harm me before I'd escape if he wanted to. I could scream, and Damore would hear me from outside and come to the rescue, but that wouldn't be quick enough. Nicole could reach out and in a blink do whatever she wanted. I was trapped with no escape. There was no winning in this situation. There was a malicious intent in her eyes as they stared at me from across the stall. I didn't see death coming today, but evil wasn't far away whenever she was close by. "What are you doing here, and how did you get in?" I demanded, my brows furrowing. "Haven't you done enough?" "Done enough of what?" "Tell me you don't have a hand in Tia's death." Her eyes flickered, and I knew she was trying to hide the truth. "You believe I want to harm you? Is that what Aaron has made you believe? Aaron has taken everything away from you, and yet you're blinded by the love you feel for him. I know you hate Aaron and would do anything to watch him ruined, and Theo would like nothing more." She couldn't fool me. I knew well enough. Some of this I saw with my very eyes. The hated Theo shared for Aaron ran deep, and anyone close enough could see it, and she was with Theo. She detached herself from the wall and took a bold step forward. "I have had so many chances to kill you, Zera Adams, but I never took it. Even now, I could reach out and snuff the air out, but I haven't. Why do you think that is?" Her brow raised. I didn't have the answer she wanted, so I kept quiet and she continued speaking. "Because I knew the role you played, and I know it's only temporary. I could live with being the bad guy for a short time while my mate and Alpha accomplished his goals. You're a smart woman, and I think to a point you know that what you have with Aaron is temporary. If you're observant enough, you would have already started seeing the signs that you and Aaron were not meant to be. I didn't understand what she spoke about, and I didn't want to understand, but I had felt Aaron's withdrawal in the last few days. That, however, was because he felt guilty for everything that had befallen the Adams since he came back into the picture. It was all guilt, and we were walking through it, and I was not going to let Nicole sow the seed of mistrust into my heart. Aaron had warned me of how manipulating she could be when sowing the seed of distrust and discord. "What do you want?" She took another step closer, and my eyes warned her not to come any closer. But she wouldn't take the warning. I mean, why would she? She was the strongest one in the room, and she could do much damage, and she knew what she was capable of. "I want you to know the truth," I scoffed in disbelief. "Because you care about me that much? You have been behind every malicious attack the Adams have experienced, from the one that happened to Lionel many months ago to Tia's death weeks ago. Only a fool will believe anything you say. So if you're here to kill me, do it and get over it." "And this is the lie Aaron Hart has told you about me. He painted me the bad guy when he has been the villain all along," she said, going on with her lies. "Are you here to kill me, or can I leave?" I demanded, taking hold of the door key to unlock it. She huffed, stepping towards me. "You do not believe me, but you believe Aaron, even though all he has done has been to use you and lie to you. Aaron has never lied to me. If all you came to do was make me doubt him, you failed." I unlocked the door to take my leave when she spoke. "Then he must have told you he killed your father, right?" My heart stopped beating at her words. I stayed frozen for a moment before recovering, and I turned to her, surprised at the length she will go just to sow her seeds of discord. "You will say anything, won't you? The fact that you don't know the truth proves my point. And why do you think he kept the truth from you all this while? He knew if you knew the truth, you would see him for what he is. A manipulator, one who takes advantage of those who care and love him. We are the same, you and I. He came into my life to use me as well, and then tossed me aside when he found out I wasn't what he wanted." All she said didn't sound like the Aaron I loved with all my heart, and I didn't want to believe this was a side of him. "He needed you to break the curse of power. Why did you think you were the only one capable of breaking his curse? He took the life of your father, and the curse came as a punishment from the moon goddess that only someone from the same bloodline would break. If what she said was true, then Aaron had lied to me all along, and I couldn't even wrap my head around the idea of her words being true. I don't believe you, and we are not the same. You don't have to, but it is the truth, and you deserve to know it. That's all I came here to tell you." I didn't stay longer at the chapel after stepping out of the bathroom. I said my farewell to Lionel, and when he asked if I'd be okay, I nodded a little and told him I would. I entered the car, and if Demore noticed the change in my demeanor, he said nothing as he drove us back home. I stayed silent, pondering everything Nicole had said to me. It had to be a lie. She was a liar and not a trustworthy person, and I needed everything she said back there to be a lie. But what if it isn't? It has to be, for the sake of all the good things ever created. We came home, and I walked out of the car, still in silence, and made my way into the house as fast as my legs could take me. I spotted Ivan on the way in, and he spoke to me, but I was unwilling to respond. I needed to speak to Aaron. It was as important as the very air in my lungs, and with every moment that passed, the need increased. I pushed open the door to our room, but found it void of Aaron's presence. He must have stepped out, I thought, then realized I had charged him with the responsibility of taking care of our son, Zion. I walked out of our room and raced toward Zion's, getting to the door. I pushed the door open and found Aaron holding Zion in his arms, chuckling. Aaron saw me enter, and he dropped Zion on his feet and straightened. He must have seen the look on my face and knew something was up. The cheerful countenance he had on his face reduced, and he turned to the instructor still in the room. "Please leave us." She took Zion's hand and led him away from the room, and as soon as the door closed from behind, I spoke. "I saw Nicole today at the funeral." I started. His eyes switched to a defensive mode in a second. Did she hurt you? He asked, and I didn't know if I could believe him. This could not be a lie, could it? His emotions felt real. I shook my head and folded my arms across my chest. She didn't. That was a surprise. She came to talk. The room became so silent I could hear the uneven beating of my heart. She came to tell me the truth. The truth, he repeated after me. The truth about what? About you. Zera, you know better than to trust what Nicole says. She plays the game of manipulation, and she's a master at it. The only one who has ever called Nicole a manipulator had been him. Maybe this was his game to discredit her words and make her the enemy. One whose words I'd never want to hear, or he spoke the truth about her. I didn't know who to trust, and so I was going to try every truth until I get the real one. I nodded. I know that, and that's why I didn't believe what she says. It's also why I'm here to ask you one simple question. What is it? Did you kill my father? I asked, with my gaze locked on his. His eyes dropped, and his silence weighed a ton on my pounding heart. My eyes welled up and my lips trembled from pain and anguish. This couldn't be the truth or reality because you didn't want it to be. Yet it was. Zera. He tried to take my hand, but I backed away from him. I held up my hand to stop him in his tracks. Did you kill my father? I asked, this time harder and louder than before. It's not a simple answer, Zera, he said in a shallow voice. The emotions on his face were raw, and so was his guilt. My heart tightened in my chest, and my vision blurred. It's simple, Aaron. It's a yes or no question. Did you kill him? His eyes grew sorrowful, unable to hold mine. He looked up after a while and nodded. Yes. My heart sank, and tears rolled down my face. How long have you known? Zera? Do not call my name, I snapped at him. How long have you known? Is that why you chose me? I didn't choose you, I heard him say, but I wasn't done talking, so I paid no mind to it. Because you knew it would be easier to fool the daughter of the man you killed into believing she's the one for you, when in fact you only needed her to break the curse of power. You needed her to believe she was the one, and so you did all you could. That's not true. He stepped towards me. Stay back. My hand shot forward, while the other wiped at the tears streaming down my face. He halted in his step. You're my mate, the one I love and need. Why should I believe you? He took my hand, ignoring my protest, to be released. I didn't want his hand on me or anywhere near me. I wanted to be far away from myself. Zera Adams, you know me. You know what I am saying is the truth. I glared at him. All I know is you're the monster who killed my father in cold blood and hid the truth from me to get your way. I snarled at him. My words must have had an acute impact because he released me and backed away, and I also took a step back. We are done, and if you as much as feel even an iota of love for me, you will not come after me. I turned from him and stormed out of the room. I entered ours and grabbed my car keys. The only thing on my mind right now was getting as far away from here as I could. I wanted to take Zion with me and run away, but I knew that would keep me here longer because Aaron wouldn't want to release his son to me. I needed to leave and put everything behind. I entered the car and drove off. The thought in my head was unending. Aaron was responsible for the pain I went through as a child. He killed my father and contributed to the horrible life I had with my mother. My life was miserable because Betty blamed me for her husband's death, and it was all Aaron's fault. He lied to me. He kept me in the dark about the truth, just so he could achieve his aim of breaking his curse. This was his game, and I was the fool all along. Third POV. Do not come after me, she said, and stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her. She was angry. She hated him, and he deserved it. He should have told her the truth, but he was afraid of how she would respond, of how she would see him if she found out the truth. He feared losing her, and now he just did. Nicole had twisted the entire story around and fed it to her, and now he was the villain in her book. He was the monster, the one she had to get away from to keep herself safe. He broke her trust, and that was on him. He should have come out with the truth sooner. Then he would have had a much better chance at her reaction. But now she didn't want to see him. He did not worry about himself or what her absence would mean with the upcoming ritual, but he worried about her safety. Out there, she was vulnerable because the same people responsible for her sister's death waited for her, and she was falling right into their hands as they wanted. I have to go after her. I have to. She might hate me now, but soon she would know it's for the best. He spoke aloud, halting his aimless pacing around the room. He hurried to the door and opened it, and before him stood Ivan. "She knows," he said, and Aaron nodded, his hands trembling a little. "Nicole got to her and fed her half the truth. Now she's on the run and I need to go after her," he told him. They didn't waste more time before racing out of the house together. He knew she told him to stay away, but that was the last thing she needed. She needed protection and safety, and she might hate him, but the pack estate would provide the highest safety she needed until the rebellion pack was no longer a threat. He was happy he took Ivan along with him because Zera had had a head start and he couldn't tell where she was headed with how disoriented his mind was. With Ivan's guide and inner eyes, he told him the way to go and the turns to make. Soon he spotted the black Prado she had taken not so far away on the lonely road, heading down the bridge, and he sighed in relief. The road was a lonely road with a few cars traveling thereon. From this distance, he could keep an eye on her without intervention and make sure that she was safe. The words barely crossed his mind when a truck jumped through the other lane and rammed into the Prado Jeep. Zera drove, tossing her off the road. "No!" he cried out, and his heart skipped in his chest as he watched the Jeep somersault off the high road. He stayed frozen that he almost lost control of the car watching what had just happened. It was a mind-gripping and heart-stopping moment. Realizing what this meant. He refused to think of anything negative despite having seen the force the car tumble off the road with. He stopped the car and got down from it, his heart racing to the point he feared it would explode, and the only thing on his mind was Zera. He dashed off to the bottom of the bridge where Zera's car had somersaulted to. The accident did not draw any attention as the road was a lonely one, and he was grateful for that. He tore at the door of the now crushed car and tossed it away to get to Zera. Her head lay on the steering wheel and blood trailed down the side of her face, dripping onto the car floor. He dragged a sharp breath at the heartbreaking sight of the unconscious Zera before him. The broken pieces of the windshield had pierced into her body. The sight broke his heart, and he blamed himself for pushing her to this point. He feared that she was dead, and the very thought sent his mind into a hazy state that numbed him up. Through his disoriented mind, he heard her faint heartbeat, which told her she was still alive, still holding on. He dragged a shaky breath and carried her into his arms, not knowing how long she had, but wanting to keep her around for as long as he could. 1 hour later. "You should go home and get change out of those clothes. I'll stay here and watch over her," Ivan said as he stepped towards Aaron, whose head was bowed and buried in his palms, sitting in the hospital waiting room. He brought Zera in, and she was immediately taken into the ICU and placed on life support. The nurses asked him to stay back despite telling them he was her partner and didn't want to leave her. He wanted to do more. He needed to do more, but he had to sit and wait. He had carried Zera into his arms and brought her to the hospital an hour, and his clothes were now soaked with her blood. The look on the faces of those who had seen him since he came in told him he looked terrible and terrifying. A mother had covered her daughter's face when he walked into the waiting room an hour ago, and she took her leave immediately after that. His head lifted, and he turned to Ivan, his eyes red and puffy from shedding so many tears. He looked lost and broken, and Ivan couldn't pretend and say he understood what his brother was currently going through, because he didn't. "I can't leave her again." "You're not leaving her. You're leaving to get yourself out of this bloody shirt and get bathed." Despite Ivan's best attempts to assure him all was in safe hands, he couldn't take the step. "I can't leave her," he said, and his tone told Ivan he wanted the topic dropped. "Then I'll get you clothes so you can bathe in the hospital bathroom," Ivan said, turning to leave the waiting room. "Call Daymore. Tell him to bring Zion," Aaron spoke up, and Ivan nodded before disappearing through the door.